Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, a lot of the rhetoric that previous speaker had mentioned is literally what got in the way of any form of emerging technology. Whether that be the automobiles, which we found sketchy and dangerous before, and people rather use horses, or the fear of planes falling out of the sky, stifling the innovation of the aviation industry, wherein people deemed that these metal beasts were too heavy to be able to get traction. But for instances of science and innovation and the way that things work, the curve is able to be maximized and shortened through capital inflow and the essence of iteration. Meaning, sure, our side is very willing much to expect and be able to understand that we may fail, there may be mistakes, there may be birth pains, but ultimately, if we want this form of innovation to be able to be cheaper and even more accessible than it already is today, then we think we need to be able to double down and invest even more. What is my extension? Rebuttals will be integrated. I am going to talk to you uniquely about why we have to heavily invest and not just invest normally, why it specifically has to be these specialized SMRs and not the full-scale, large conventional ones or micro-reactors. And I'm going to impact the idea of energy security, which we think is the interest of all particular countries on average to be able to be prepared to the future. First thing, rebuttals. What did the previous speaker say? The previous speaker gave this propaganda and fear-mongering as to how this is risky, as to how this is new. We think that's a lie. China currently has 58 nuclear reactors with 30 underway. France has 56 reactors. The US has roughly 94. Meaning, whether we're talking about large-scale ones, SMRs, or micro-reactors, these all already do exist. It's never been cheaper, it's never been as new. Because it's now 2025, maybe that argument could have worked in the early 2000s, but right now, it only feels that way because in our part of the world, in the Philippines, it is a strange and alien technology which continues to be expensive and inaccessible. But if as developing nations and developed nations, we doubled down our investment and took our head out of the clouds with the failure and the promise and the lie of renewable energy has largely gotten in the way of getting cleaner and cheaper energy. Why is that the case? You might say, Joseph, you're being assumptive. No, but what Jaron's point stands, meaning not only are we at the mercy of the elements, but our infrastructure isn't the mercy to have all of them. Meaning, if you want to get a fraction of their energy output, you need all of them. You need solar panels because in days wherein it's not necessarily going to be cloudy, it might be sunny. We're going to get that. You need hydro dams because in instances where it's low tide or high tide, you want to capitalize it. You need wind turbines to be able to get the wind during particular seasons like that of typhoons. This creates a sense of redundancy, and on a per dollar basis or per peso basis, it's actually more expensive to be able to have to do all of them as opposed to doing SMRs. Uniquely, SMRs, especially with heavily investment, allows us to be able to catch the tailwind or the contributing factor of economies of scale that ultimately allow it to be cheaper. Meaning, it's already cheap in China, it can be cheaper in our parts of the world. First level of analysis we have to understand. In rich and developed countries who already have nuclear programs, we want them to continue heavily investing and be able to compete with each other and stay ahead of the curve. This is amidst a backdrop of very heavy urbanization and industrialization we see happening in China, in Europe, in the United States, where you have the growth of many new emerging cities and central business districts like Texas. I hear it's a particularly nice place to go there and be able to do businesses and create data centers. Or in Shanghai and Beijing and other parts of China as they continue to expand with the rapid development of Evergrande and other property developers, the impact here is being able to continue being competitive among each other and be able to secure the first mover advantage. Meaning, precisely because of Donald Trump protectionist policy, it now becomes their incentive to continue competing against Germany and the US in terms of being able to have nuclear power and capacity to continue building more particular reactors and be able to stay ahead of the curve. SMRs are currently an underserved segment. because they currently have the really big ones or the really small ones. The unique opportunity here are the mid-sized ones to be able to grant certain states and certain countries, especially of which they sell to, an ability to be able to get that particular technology when they license out the intellectual property. Number two, we think that poorer and developing nations who don't yet have that particular capacity are now able to start their nuclear programs. We lower the barriers for entry. They can rent and outsource particular technology, just like what the Philippines did with Westinghouse and General Electric during the time of Marcos, or what current politicians like Mark Coangco, under the office of the president, and my dad, Primitivo Steve Singson, are currently working on when they have certain partnerships with Dubai, who are actually creating joint ventures funded by the Koreans and Japanese to literally be able to invest in SMRs. This uniquely is allowing them the capacity to be able to get the benefit of both worlds. It's not as scary or a hard sell as building a large-scale one, and we're able to get the energy throughput and optimization that Jaron said, we heard little to no response to, like that of microreactors. Third, nuclear waste. We think that the previous speaker talked about waste. Guys, these already do exist. We have 101 ways to be able to deal with waste. This is only a couple of grams, which we think can easily be transported. But the unique nuance to SMRs is that as compared to that of large-scale reactors, it's not as difficult or expensive to be able to contain. So in the worst case where, oh my gosh, the minority situation happens and we have a nuclear fallout or there's a particular leak, we're able to contain that easier, and it's not as dramatic or as catastrophic as that when you have a large-scale reactor. Uniquely, ladies and gentlemen, we have to understand the capitalist incentive structure that uniquely happen when you heavily invest, as well as the upside opportunities unique to SMRs that actually make this particular technology cheaper when you're actually maximizing the curve or chasing it when you're ultimately able to allow access to make it more proliferated. We are very proud to stand on side proposition. Thank you.